Hello and welcome to another Lord of the Rings Rise to War video. I am the player who plays as the Witch King under the mountain, and today we're going to be talking through a few different topics. I'm coming towards the back end of the season now. We've got, as you can see there, the timer, so we've got 3 days left. And then there'll be one more until we hit bag end. Sort of the blessing and the curse that is bag end. I know some people like the rest, but then they're like, oh, I just want to get back into the game. I get it. I'm kind of the same. So the last week or so of this season's been pretty chilled out. It's been settled for a little while. It's been quite nice to test some builds. So I'm probably going to talk around things like what I think of the new movement system, and the march system, and what types of units are good, and how forts work a little bit differently in this version now, as it's a Kings of Men season. And I'm going to focus a little bit on relocates, which I think the devs do kind of need to do something with, particularly if teams move at speed, because people can get trapped that could do with being a way out. I may touch a little bit on free-to-play. There's been a lot of talk around that lately. It's a little bit different to the sort of stuff that's around on the internet at the moment. I want to touch on a particular unit, which there's been a lot of talk I've seen from people around units lately and which ones are theoretically the best. After having a week or so of fighting with a lot of different units, I'd probably like to come up with what I feel is the best value unit you can find in the game. And I'm probably going to go back to talking about initiative and Sauron again, because it very much is a difference in how you punch up in non-roleplay. And if I ever hear an evil player moaning anytime soon that they can't run a formation in evil roleplay, seriously, you have one of the best commanders in the game. You can steal all sorts of stuff. Just get on with it. You may not have a Dane, fine, I get that. But you've got a few people pretty close, so that's kind of the topic of today. But first of all, I'll just do the kind of normal run through the season and where we're at. So the map looks like this, and it's a very different colour to probably the last time we did this. The Meat Kingdom have picked up a lot of this map around here and wiped a couple of people off the map. We still own, as in Dobie and Axed, we still own all this region here. And the Ring, of course, after the battle with Meat, which was actually really good fun. We're now just PvPing with the Lone Kingdom, with Bank and Debt, Atmi's group, and it's been a lot of fun. I think there was some tensions at one point. I'm pretty sure they've calmed down a little bit now. Everyone's just accepting that this is the way it is till the end of the season, and we have no intention of sort of pushing this capital. It's just been a place where people can test builds, and it's been quite fun. I'm sort of sat over there now. I might try and move forward a little bit, unless this is Caiaphas. Good old Caiaphas absolutely smashed me earlier on. But not as much as what he did yesterday. So it's kind of like slow gains. We'll come back to that in a minute. I'm kind of going to sit here, and I reckon someone like Law will probably decide it's a good idea to hit me. So let's see if he does. This player here is a really good player and actually a genuinely nice bloke, but he is also running 2 accounts now. The capital letters clearly make it more serious. If you see the account that's non-capital walking at you, you have a little bit of a chance. If you see the account that is in capital letters, unless you're a super big kraken, you do not have a great deal of chance. Put it that way. But fair play to him. Good guy. So this is kind of where we are on the map, just walking past Caiaphas, as a lot of players do. And I guess really the only thing to sort of suggest, and while we're on the subject of movement, is you'll see if you've not played 2.0 at all, I am no longer walking in a diagonal line. Now, this march system has kind of not divided the community so much. Oh, it looks like someone was going to try and hit me. That's a shame. Not quite divided the community so much. I think people were so used to how it worked in 1.0, where you could go on a diagonal, you could go across a mountain, you could pretty much do anything. And now you can't, so you have to have a route to the tile. Your reinforcements have to have a route to get to you. Reinforcement sniping is a real thing. even now when we're testing builds, reinforcement sniping is a real thing. I'm pretty sure I got one yesterday somewhere. I'll try and find it very quickly so I can show you what I mean. As you can see, there's been quite a bit of battling. Here you go. So this is what I'm talking about. So my reinforcements basically walked along the path. This person here was stood on top of that tile. My reinforcements all died. At least I got a little chunk out of his army, because realistically, you don't get much of a chunk these days out of the army. And the reinforcements have to find a safe path. To be honest, if I could guarantee I was going to draw with someone, I would show you how that works. But I cannot guarantee I'm going to draw with anyone around here. Maybe I'll try taking on Caiaphas after someone's hit him, and I'll hopefully at least get a draw. So let's see what happens. But basically, the march system now means you don't really walk in straight lines unless you've got direct access. You go round the side, you do pretty much different things. And Caiaphas is no longer there. So I will not be doing that. I'll just hit law. We'll just show you what it is. Why not, eh? Hopefully we'll get a draw. It's very doubtful. But we'll see what happens. Kind of rambling around this. So, on the march system then, so obviously now Tyranny walks on diagonals, you do have to go around mountains, which is a little bit annoying but more realistic. They've introduced some different things in regards to forts in the last couple of days, where you're going to be able to basically have troops in your fort waiting for you to reinforce, which I think is a pretty cool feature, because you could be fighting a long way away and now you can actually reinforce, which is pretty good. That clearly wasn't Law's main formation, I'm guessing, by the way that's just worked out all right. To allude to later on, Guardians seem to be pretty OP, but just to show you the gear that we're talking about here, that's the classic set, which is pretty good for Gimli. As you can see, that's 30 focus, pretty impressive. And he's got a pretty tasty alerts too. I mean, could have completed the set, I guess, but there you go. I'm probably dead, although I've managed to take that hit, which is pretty good. So we've got some PvP in there. I'll just recall and refill so you can see what I mean by reinforcing. So when you recall, you do go back to your fort in a straight line. I will speed this up so we're not looking at it. And here's your reinforcement. So you press your button like you always used to. It now costs you a little bit of stamina. I'm reinforcing with whole Guardians, and they take a path. So here you go. So they literally take what they feel is the safest path, which I would question sometimes, I'll be honest, across the battlefield, all the way down to wherever your fort is. So if someone came to stand here, for example, or they cut those tiles off there, I would either have to reroute, or if they were stood here, my reinforcements would just die to them before they get to my fort. If you're reinforcing and you're not in your fort, your troops go to your fort first and then come out here, which is kind of how I suppose they've easily been able to enhance this version of a fort, where they're now saying you can send troops directly to a fort in future seasons, which is pretty cool. I think that's a really good thing. They've also said you can have one particular type of fort where you can now change commanders and change troop types, which again, the game's kind of been crying out for, and is a little bit of a flashback to 1.0, I guess. So yeah, the movement system's a bit strange, and it kind of goes into how you take passes and crossings and things like that also. So you can't take a keep or a pass or a crossing these days unless you've got a fort by it. And this has kind of led to quite a few different tactics. So when people start attacking these passes, you could potentially see the enemy flying over with eagles, which I'll touch on units shortly, to destroy the fort, so that then you can't take the pass even if you get it right the way down. Or they might do that to try and kill the attackers or the siege or whatever it might be. It's a pretty cool, kind of realistic version of the game, which you know I like. I think they've added some stuff into 2.0 that they've tried to make it more realistic, and I get it's a little bit different from 1.0, and it's been hard work at points, but I think now we're trying to get an understanding of how it works. From someone who's played a lot in this season, I kind of just feel like you've got to accept it for what it is, but the stuff they've kind of tried to introduce, if they could just change a few things, I think it's pretty good. And quite realistic, particularly with this new type of fort and that kind of stuff. So you can kind of see where it's going. It should be quite good. But you have to have a fort there. Now, your key units for movement are probably your eagles. They are classed as a flying unit. So if you've got a fort here, in fact, I'll show you from the map. It's probably the easiest. So eagles can go, say this is my fort here. They can go anywhere within this fort range. They cannot travel outside of it unless they're going to another fort, but they cannot take a tile outside of the fort range. But they can take one anywhere within it. So you no longer have to have connecting tiles, as I'm pretty sure everyone knows. But from here, if we were trying to take this keep, I could sort of preset, send my main army with eagles potentially, and try and get a fort up around this keep. It's led to some interesting tactics where people are trying to get in front by having forts at keeps early, so they can obviously try and take them when they get there. And that's been pretty cool. I've got no issues with that. The other thing is you are not restricted on movement on any other type of unit. So if you've got cavalry, or you have got infantry, or if you've got large units, as long as they have a route to get there, which means they have to have all the crossings in between taken, which is going to lead me onto my relocate point shortly. As long as you have a route to get there, you can travel anywhere on the map. You can't occupy the tile once you get there, because you have to do that from within a fort range, but you can travel anywhere. So for casual players, I actually think this is a great way of going about things, because I could say if this keep was being taken, which obviously it's not because it's already ours, but say if it was, and there was a pin here for say 20 UTC, but you only logged on at 17 UTC because you're a pretty casual player, and it's a 2-hour walk, and you've got to build a fort, and the forts now take 2.5 hours. The realistic nature of you getting to that keeping time to help your fellowship is low in the old version of the game. Now, not so much, because you can, from your base, if you really want to, march anywhere. So I could take this formation here. It'd take 1 hour 33, but they'd be there in time to siege or attack the keep. You can't reinforce, but you could get one hit off on the keep. If everyone in the fellowship does that, no one has a problem. And I think that's a great lesson for casual players, that you no longer need that for. And I don't think it's been talked about enough how much of a change that actually is, and how good that change is for people in the game. So I kind of want to touch on relocates, which is still the same to a degree. So you still have to build a 3x3, you still have to build a relocation camp. It still has to not be connected to a river or a crossing or a mountain, so it still has to be a gap, otherwise it won't allow you to relocate. But I do want to talk about a relocation issue, and we had it this season, and I hope the devs kind of look at some of the videos that have been sent to them and sort of fix the issue. So because of the way we moved around the map, we quite swiftly came from here, and all this was owned by Loan all around this area here. But we quite swiftly came back from here and took these keeps, which meant they no longer had a route to their kingdom. So when the players that were in this part here were uprooted, they couldn't go anywhere under the new uproot rules. And I kind of get the reason why they've put the uproot rule in like that, because you wouldn't want someone being able to, say, relocate from this kingdom here to here by dropping their tags and then join this kingdom and start fighting people. It could be a bit weird and wonderful. So you have to have a route to get there. I get that. I just think they need to look around. If you're in a kingdom and you get relocated, it should, no matter how, just end up in one of the lands of that kingdom, because otherwise you get players trapped and it's a pain for both sides. So we obviously can't get them out of here because there's no route of getting them out. We actually allowed them to have some passes at one stage to allow them to sort of filter out, and a few of them did, but they didn't all get out in time. So yeah, it's just, I think it's a difficult dynamic. They had players trapped in here who weren't interested in playing anymore. We were getting annoyed because they were taking towers behind enemy lines. It's just it's an annoying feature that I think if the devs could look at that around relocates, I think it'd be quite interesting. You still have a relocation cooldown, and if you relocate someone 2 or 3 times, they then get protection for 12 hours or so. Which I get it. I kind of understand. Um, and that's kind of what I wanted to look at from that regard. Now, there's a few other things I kind of feel I want to clear up, and I suppose I'll start by because I didn't actually show this before. So, bear in mind, I'm a pretty active player, and I'm not saying I'm right about everything because I'm not, and I'm not saying I know everything about the game because I don't. I don't know all the math. I don't get involved in too much of the math behind the game sometimes. I play the game through testing and builds and looking at how something works and how it doesn't work, and what works for me might not work for someone else. Formation wise, everyone's pretty much running the meta at this point, but I just kind of, there's a few things that I sort of want to talk about. So we've sat in about, we're sat in sort of between 8th and 15th full season in personal production. Fellowship production wise, we're sort of here, which is pretty good. There's been some really active fellowships in this season, and everyone's had some good fighting, so that's been pleasing. From a teamwork perspective, and I think everyone's kind of come to the conclusion that, to be fair to Axt and Dobie, that we're both pretty strong, but I think people have kind of got this opinion that Axt are a lot stronger than us, and to be fair, if you check through the top 50, it's quite equal, and I think it's because a lot of people kind of do their damaging silently, and I think from a whale situation, there's a lot. So we're currently sat 4th in the contribution ranking. That's probably been a little bit distorted. I've sat between 6th and 10th, but in the last week or so, it's literally been pure fighting. So I've been able to climb up a little bit, luckily. But I've been between 6th and 10th all season, just because the way I play the game. I'm not a cracking level of player. I've got some very good equipment. I will lose fights to a lot of different people, which I'm going to show you hopefully later on. But with the style I play the game, I tend to get a lot of contribution because I'm like one of those things that never really go away. Yeah, so I'll just show you as well. I've kind of been working on a little bit of things for free to play, which I'd like to do more of in the future. And I've been testing a variety of formations. This is just the one I'm working with at the moment, and I don't think this is unreasonable to get to. I get these are quite high respect. Comms, you could probably tone it down a little bit. I'm pretty sure everyone's seen by now that Frodo as a tank is pretty incredible. Probably one of the best tanks in the game. Hard for Sauron to mess with as well, which is pretty impressive. And the main thing for him is this here, where he's dropping the damage by 30%. And defense is key at the moment. Unit defense. I mean, even running purples, the defense stats pretty high on the cataphracts. It's defense is really important at the moment, due to the fact that pretty much everyone's running physical damage dealers. Now, what I will say about that, and I'd be quite interested to know people's thoughts on this, is with the amount of high defense troops that are now knocking around, is something like the skill Flay, which for the life of me, I can't remember what the badge looks like. Here we go. This skill here, Flay, is this now more useful because you are ignoring 15% of the target's defense? There are some very, very chunky unit defense builds these days where everything is kind of based around unit defense and command. I'd be interested to know if people felt that's kind of moved up a little bit in the world, because it was seen as one of the poorer kind of red sort of attacking sets. For me now, I'd love to test that at some stage and see how it goes, because a lot of units have got pretty high defense. Just to go back to this, and so we're using Eowyn for, again, damage reduction. The gear's not really that important, but she's got a 40% chance of giving 3 allied formations as long as the melee units. Plus 42 defense, chance increased to 50%, so fair play. She's also got quite a good heal. I know healing's not what it was, and I know it's not great, but I found she gets a little bit of heal. This leads into a different conversation with Gimli. So, what I'm trying to suggest here is, and you would really use the battle axe. Purple battle axe would be just as fine. But I'm looking at pieces that you can get easily accessible as a sort of free to play player, whereby you can get, or or a low spender, you can get the pipe, which has got some commander damage, even though it hasn't got commander attack. I found the commander damage was more important than the commander attack of say a purple item. This is from sort of the season pass, and you can refine it quite well. So I feel like that's quite a good kind of piece as a barometer. And this again you can get from the end of season store. And the damage range is pretty good. It's easy to refine. It's got some quite nice attack. And if you're using it on someone like a Gimli, the focus is pretty nice because it allows you, if you ever get around to the unique, you need over 50 to sort of get Keen Eye going. I saw another commander of Keen Eye the other day, actually. I can't remember who it was, but there you go. So that's why Gimli's in there. And then you've got Dwelling in there full of perps, running the sort of damage build. I think it's crazy that if you're starting as a new player now as Erebor, you get Dwelling and Gimli, and that's pretty impressive for the sort of start of the game, and I would definitely work on that. But as far as a farming formation goes, we've lost we lost there less than a command, I would guess, by the time it goes back into when it's gone back into the apothecary. We've lost 47 troops with 29 heavily wounded. I mean, you can't really complain about that when you're sweeping mobs level 30. So I've been working around different things. I'm not saying this is the be-all and end-all of a formation, so I don't think it is. You could probably put a Gandalf the Grey in there, or even a Falcon if you're using dwarves. I think Falcon's a great option, to be honest, with his skills, but I'll do another video on free-to-play, probably before the end of the season, I guess. But I was just showing what I'm kind of working around, and those kind of types of equipment that you can get quite easily from the end of season store. And that's kind of thing that I find hard about people who do best in slot videos for people, because I get you can focus those videos on the Krakens of the world. And, the reality is not everyone's got perfect gear or all those kind of things, or people don't want to spend on games sometimes, or they might want to spend a little bit. It's kind of a way of trying to find them some value, and if we can pick up items from the end of season store just by playing the game, great. If we can pick up items by the season pass, and it's $15 or whatever it is now, it's not bad value for what it is, and the other gold items will take care of themselves as they go along. I just think it's an interesting concept that people need to look at when they're thinking about best in slot items for different commanders and things like that. I'm going to touch on units at this point, I think. And I've kind of got a bit of I kept getting frustrated. I suppose that's the key, because I was running stuff like this, right? So my gear is not incredibly shabby. Admittedly, I should change this, and I would if I had 4 hammers. I would have an initiative based Sauron, because the higher his initiative, the more he can steal in pre-battle through madness. More of a chance of flipping battles. If you are looking at punching up against better opponents, if you've got a faster Sauron, you've always got a chance. That's what I've found. This report, bear in mind, I'll just show you the rest of my gear, upset me enough to start testing stuff. I mean, my commanders are not terrible, and I get these commanders are better and the gear's better, right? So there is a initiative set there. It's really nice. Again, Bjorn R10 with a really nice might set. Z16, the classic Z16. No need for any more than that, but Warcry set, really nice. And a pretty decent initiative set. Now, in this report, I won't dig too far into it. Nothing is stolen from me, and I should naturally counter his Guardians with the fact that I've got a full cavalry comp. So I should, in my eyes, I feel like this should. If I'd lost by say 1600, I probably wouldn't have even bothered looking into this. And I've seen other videos on units for tanks, which kind of don't really take into account well, they take into account HP, sorry, but they don't take into account the cost or the time to conscript, and it depends how you play the game. So, my bugbear with stuff like this is someone turns around and says Cold Drakes are amazing, and Mama Killer are amazing, and for your average player to get enough resources to be able to conscript both of those around the clock, they've got to be in the top 10 of production. And if they haven't got whaled gear, they're going to lose them troops pretty quick. So they're going to be fighting for 5-6 battles a day at most. And the last I looked from a fellowship point of view, particularly when it's like big battles, you want people to be able to reload and go again and be able to take towers and do whatever else. So I just struggle when people recommend high-end units because we all know they're good. Don't get me wrong, they cost a lot of stamina now. I mean, if you're using a large unit like that, like a Cold Drake, a colossal unit, which is great if you're drawing the enemy bounces back, but it's costing you 80 stamina every time you walk onto the battlefield to occupy a tile. So I'll touch on that kind of unit in a minute, but for me, it's just baffling, I guess. But this report led me to start thinking, well, what about these guys? So I'm going to show you 2 reports, and they're against the same person. Now, I appreciate he's got the counter here because these are large units. But that's a pretty alarming loss, right? Same 4 commanders that I'm about to show you. All he's done is change those two's position. Yes, I've got a little bit more HP, but that's a far better result running Guardians against Guardians. So, my point is, I'd just like to show you this. So if I'm going to conscript Guardians, if I've got this done, it's like sort of a 5 or 6 hour time for sort of conscripting. You can run them. They're cheap as chips, really, to be honest. They're a pretty low level unit. But the skills that they have, and when you look at it, is this sort of 50% chance of reducing physical damage by 10%. Now, people are running fortitude sets to try and stop physical damage, which I appreciate are 100% at the time they take 10% damage off. But these guys, for every hit they take, they've got 50-50 shot of taking that 10% less damage, just as a skill, right? Which is pretty impressive in itself. Now, this isn't really anything, and yeah, okay, there's a little bit of heat per skin. There's not a lot of burn damage in the game at the moment. Yes, you could say if they're hit by an elemental damage dealer, they're still going to die quick-ish, but realistically, a lot of the damage is physical damage at the moment. So, that's a really key skill, and I know a couple other people have got it, like tile guards and things like that. And then I just want to go over here. So, just to compare, they've got really low initiative. Fine, accept that. They're a dwarf, they're slow. But, it leads back to that point, never trust a elf to do a dwarf's work, as it were, because we're going to go through that in a minute. So you've got HP of 45, defense of 55, which is really what you're looking at in your tank, right? So let's go to a tower guard. HP 40, defense 46, so they're getting absolutely smashed. Now, they have the same skill as shielding, but realistically, not comparable because they're so sort of fewer in health. So then we'll scroll down, and this one really alarmed me when I started looking into it, actually. So, Swan Knights, appreciate for those first 3 rounds they get an extra 20, but realistically their defense is only 60, right? So you've got Guardian that's pretty much the same. You go down to Bow Knights, which people use, so you're making sure you're not taking hits. As always with Elves, there's no point in being there, they're just squishy. You may as well just put paper up against your army. But it's, 34 defense, slightly higher HP, but then it's 2 units per 2 units dwarf for 1 unit of Bow Knights. So again, I'm struggling to see how anything is beyond the Guardian. Even go down to your Cataphracts, right? Again, 48, 88. Now, the HP is pretty important with these guys, granted, and the initiative's good. But again, 48 defense. So, realistically, I'm struggling to see what works better than a Guardian. And we should have known this because some people have been using them all season and kind of having great results. But I found in the last day or so, since I've been using them, that my my battle reports have been a lot better against anyone. The Crusher's a pretty good unit as well, by the way, because they're the cheapest unit in the game. You'd probably trade off a little bit of defense, granted, but you gain some good skills. But for me, honestly and truthfully, considering the meta is pretty heavy dwarf damage dealer, there's not really a better unit than him, in my opinion. Now, I've seen stuff, obviously, like I say, where people are recommending all sorts of units. But if you're looking at cost against actual performance, which sometimes I do question how much people who are suggesting these things actually play the game, you know, it's pretty incredible. I mean, you know, we've took a hit here. I should win this fight, but the fact that I'm out geared heavily, it's still impressive. And we've got countless reports here where, I mean, I haven't got anywhere near that kind of level of report against him running other troops this season. So I just take a port out, as always, for dwarves. And again, I was a little bit disappointed with this one. But I suppose there is a little bit of elemental damage in there. Not that troops are really up to it much, but to be fair, 30k in troop damage isn't bad. All these troops have done pretty well there, actually. I think the fact that Dane died early didn't really do me any favours there, but again, I kind of feel like Guardians are leaving me always in the fight, and they're cheap, so I can just keep reloading. Again, I haven't had great results versus this guy all season. I've been getting better results since I switched to Guardians. I just think it's an interesting kind of point of view that a lot of people, again, you know, I've no right to get anywhere near in this fight either, because this is a really well geared formation. The amount of HP it's got and the cost of that formation is outrageous versus mine. It's a loss, yes, but ultimately it's kind of a victory for resources when we're already winning on resources against these guys. So I just kind of thought it was a really interesting point that, you know, we look around a lot of different units, and I think on some stuff I've seen, they've only come up as sort of an A tier unit. For me, they are a massive S tier unit now, because I can't see a better way of staying in a fight if you fight all day. Now, I'm not saying just go out and train Guardians all day and all night, but realistically, if you're using stuff as well, and you've got to think they actually get a benefit from this. If you're potentially using 2 dwarves in your formation, you're also then going to benefit from the Bloodline skill. So, you know, an extra 10 defense. It's not to be sniffed at, to be honest. So I'm just putting the case forward for the dwarves. Yes, I do love the dwarves, don't get me wrong. The elves are so squishy, it's ridiculous. Shouldn't really be in the game, but there you go. So I just wanted to mention that. I'll probably just go back quickly while I'm talking about unit types. So while we're talking about unit types, I will talk about colossal units, if I can find one in here. I'm pretty sure I've got some. Here they go. Now, Mama Killer are an amazing unit. They're great for defending your base, but if you try and put them out on the battlefield, they're an absolute logistical nightmare. So, one, you become the biggest target ever for someone to hit. Let's see if I can just make one walk around so you can kind of see the enormity of what they are. Let's have a siege elf riding a Mama Kill. Sounds like a good day out for someone. Bad game. Here we go. So this will class as a colossal formation. Now, it's really awkward, I've found, to actually march to some places, because you have to have an easier route to get to them. So I've just used 40 stamina moving to there. Now, again, if you want to stay in the fight, I get they take some draws sometimes. Hey, look at the Gil on top of that. I don't know why we've got Bjorn in surrounding this. It's like some kind of scene from Aladdin where they started singing that Prince Ali song in the new version. That's a bit weird. So I can't get the song away now. So there you go. So Gil is on top of his Mama Kill, and he's coming out here, and he'll sit on these 4 tiles here. Now, admittedly, the enemy has to find the right tile to hit you on, which in this case is this one. But once you've worked that out, it's pretty easy to hit you. Sometimes they come here and can't work out why they're not hitting you. So I really don't like them, because you have to have kind of like a 2x2 path for them to be able to reinforce and all sorts of stuff. They're just a bit of a mess. They can't really get to anywhere where you want them to. And I think they're a nice idea in principle, but if you're telling me that if that's on the battlefield like that, right? And considering if you're occupying these 4 tiles, it's costing you 80 stamina. And I get why it's 40 and 80. It's 40 because movement's 10, and you're occupying 4 tiles technically with your movement, and it's the same for occupy, 20 per occupy, you're on 84 tiles again. Simple maths, let's not be brainless, it's 80, get it. I just think it's too much, because if you're trying to use these in a fight, one, look, you just become a massive target for someone. I'm not being funny, but you look like you should be beaten. And then 2, your reinforce costs the same, appreciated, but if you've got to move twice, you can literally move twice in a day and occupy tiles before you have to start waiting for redoing stamina. Now, again, it depends what your playstyle is, but if you're telling me you only want to come out once in the morning and in a big battle and sort of take 1 hit and then go back and take another hit later on, fine. If that's your playstyle, get on with it, but you're not massively useful to your fellowship at that point, and that's brutal honesty. So, for me, colossal units, even though they look pretty, they're not for me, and Prince Ali can take his little march home. So that was that. And then my last point really is Sauron. Now, it's frustrating because I quite like the way my Sauron's built currently. But the sad part of it is that you can just get beaten so easily by other people's Saurons. And I'm so pleased this person's actually got this piece on. So if you're lucky enough to have the classic gear, there is an initiative piece that gives you 21 initiative, the Scout's Mail Classic, if you've got the deafness skill. Which initiative now affects who goes first in battle, in effect. And it adds up the unit score plus the commander score equals who goes first. Now, obviously, if you're using classic gear, again, there's some initiative on this piece, and there's some initiative on this piece, and there's some initiative on this piece. Now, if you're using classic gear, you cannot make a full set. So in this case, it doesn't really matter what his other pieces have got. He can't make a full set anyway because he's using classic gear. But their stats seem to be higher than most. So the only thing I will say is that the actual initiative set here, which is brilliant, by the way, if you can get it on certain items, gives you formation plus 10 during combat. So it actually gives you commander plus 10 and it gives you units plus 10. So it actually stacks sort of twice. So even though these 2 pieces are great, having a full initiative set is probably for the best. I'll show you the gear pieces and then I'll kind of, as examples, and then I'll sort of show you a battle report as to why it's important. So if you're wanting to keep his focus high, which you don't really necessarily need to do, you can use an obsidian dagger. I know from looking into these pieces lately, because I've been trying to work out what I can do in bag end with a couple of hammers, this is one of your best pieces for initiative as a weapon. There are a couple more as well, but realistically, I think for what the reach gives you, it's probably the best because it gives you a little bit of focus, a little bit of damage, and 6 initiative. As a chess piece, I think there's only one with initiative. I'm not sure which one of them it's in. Is it this one? I won't be using this anyway, but it's the Buddha outfit, as I like to call it. Here we go. So the one that makes everyone look like a Buddha. And so this has got some initiative on it. Again, that would be plus 6 initiative, which is again pretty handy. But it doesn't really suit a Sauron, if we're being honest. But you could use it on damage dealers. Again, going first isn't the worst thing. Then as a helmet choice, you'll want the Call of the Forest, which again has got plus 6 initiative. I do actually have one of these with the agility set. And as an accessory, you can use something like a Merius Reigns, which has got plus 6 initiative. So you can build, theoretically, you're likely to use, say, 18 initiative at most, I would say. So you've got 18 plus the set effect, so you're talking 28, 38 on top of the units. At that point, it outweighs, I would say, but that's kind of like a whale look at it. But you could build a purple initiative set and still run Sauron pretty quick. So you'd beat a lot of people into the pre-battle phase, which allows you to kind of do some of the horrible stuff that Sauron does, and some of the reports that he switches in people's favour are absolutely outrageous. So I've kind of touched on it before, but I'll touch on it again. The big skill for Sauron and why he's actually pretty good is that you only really need him R0, R1 to be able to run him. R5's handy because the R5's quite nice, where you sort of drop in stats on commanders and you're also immune to stun. You know, it's sort of stat reduction affects 4 commanders for this case. Pretty cool skill. But this is really the thing that you're after. So this is handy because it kind of goes up. If you've got an okay-ish focus set, it goes up to about 15%. So, you know, it's kind of a bit of a white rider, but not quite as good. But it's really this skill here, the level 5 skill, which is impressive because you've got a 35% chance to inflict madness on the target for 1 round. Again, it's 3 enemies, but that's a lot. So it's the troops and the commander. In all fairness, this skill is pretty broken because it works way more than 35% of the time, and the coin flip definitely works more than 50% of the time for madness, particularly when it hits Gandalf, who it just seems to completely smoke you on. So I'll try and show you how it works. And I'm trying to think of a fight where it's perhaps happened to me. Let's check this out. So, like I was saying, the important part is the pre-battle report. So, in pre-battle, this is where Sauron's skill goes off. His Sauron's so fast that he's the first person to act in this pre-battle phase. Now, to me, that is the biggest warning sign I can have in any battle report as far as things go. And I'm actually sure in this one he does steal my White Council, which is why I was quite surprised it's so close. So, he affects with the enemy all the debuff on all my commanders. Yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. You're now slightly worse off. That's why I actually think it's quite important to have high attack on your commanders these days. So even if you do get hit by a Sauron and your damage dealers have quite high attack, say 230 plus, you're still around the 200 soft cap where you're doing good damage. So probably worth noting that as a different video. Then I'm hit by the Deceiver, and this is where all hell breaks loose. So affected by madness were my Guardians. Bjorn managed to avoid it. They managed to avoid it, and his Guardians. This is the one that really hurts. And there's an argument that your Gandalf the White these days should have a sort of high focus, high initiative set. So say run agility on a fine smoking pipe, on a Noldor sword, maybe a Call of the Forest to give you a little bit more initiative, something like that, just so you've actually got some focus and some initiative to try and counter this, because Gandalf's base initiative is actually higher. So it's fun. His Guardians are also affected by madness, but this is really the key one. So we go down. Then his Gandalf is quicker than my Sauron, which again isn't ideal because then his Gandalf casts his White Council on himself, which is handy for him, not so much for me. And he also casts his White Rider on who he's supposed to do, which is good. Now my issue is my Gandalf, because he's affected by madness, activates White Council. Everything looks hunky-dory until he decides he's beset with madness and couldn't differentiate friend or foe. Not sure how he manages that, to be perfectly honest, when he's stood by most of them, but there you go. And yeah, he basically casts it on basically the enemy formation. Although, to be fair, it's probably easily done these days because everyone's running the same meta, so he's probably looking across and going, oh yeah, there's Bjorn, Gandalf the White, and Sauron. Although he must surely think at that point, oh wait, I'm looking at myself. Anyway, it's a different point. Thankfully, he resisted on White Rider, and I actually managed to get that across the other side. If that hits you as well, and he steals White Council from you, it's Sauron, then it's pretty nasty. So then my Sauron comes up at the end because he's really slow. And even though he's put people into madness, it doesn't affect anything pre-battle. So the fact that I actually got close in that report, bearing in mind that I had no White Council, shows how tanky these Guardians actually are. But also shows the ability that Sauron has, which is pretty good. So initiative is a really key skill. And on that, I don't really think I've got anything else I kind of wanted to cover today. At the end of season, I can only get 2 hammers because I've kind of used all mine, which is a bit frustrating. So I'd really like to be able to break this down. I'm trying to work out a way that I can break this down, and break this down. In fact, it's not that one. I got it wrong. To break this down, to get this piece out of here, while also breaking this down, and also breaking this down. But I could probably get away with it a little bit if I could just pick up a Call of the Forest in Bag End somehow. If I could pick up a Call of the Forest so I can just refine, because there's no pieces in here that I actually want, I can get this out. Actually, I can't do that because there's loads of pieces in there that I actually want. So, no, I need a hammer for that. So, yeah, I basically need 4 hammers. Was it the Rains that hasn't really got anything in? See, it's got a load of pipes in I don't really need, but it's just frustrating. I mean, why they can't just let you break down your own gear, it's really annoying. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I will be, over a period of time, breaking this down. I will probably try and find some sort of agility set in Bag End, whatever that might be. So I presume it will probably be running this, but I kind of need to work out how that's going to work. Not quite sure at this point, but my ultimate goal is going to be to break down some items, get those out that I actually need to refine, and then kind of piece these pieces back into sorting that out. But yeah, that was about everything that I kind of wanted to cover today, I think. So yeah, that's kind of where our season's at. We'll be in Bag End in a few days. I'll be trying to test some stuff in the meantime. I'll be taking my slow guardians back up here for a walk in a moment, I hope, and see what's going on. That's a brave person. I'll probably go over this side again, really. It looks like this is kind of the main place where we're sort of PvPing at the minute. So I'll go stand somewhere around here and see what's going on. But yeah, that's pretty much everything for today. So I hope everyone's enjoyed the video. I hope it's been informative. If in doubt on any of these things, and particularly with gear, I really can't stress enough to always follow your nose, but just try things out for yourself. Don't necessarily take people's theoretical damage calculations or which the math is right, by the way, but take those things as face value, because there's certain skills that I watched something. Okay, I'll go into this actually before I go, because it really bugged me the other day. I saw Witch King was in F for damage, and I appreciate he's got 2 damage skills and they're not fantastic, right? He's got Nazgul, which is okay, and he's got Lord of the Nazgul, which is okay. I prefer to run him as a support, that's why he's being run like this. But this skill here, if he's fast enough, completely avoids White Council. So yes, his damage isn't amazing, but his damage in them first 3 rounds is better than most commanders, providing he's fast enough and his base initiative is already really high. So the likelihood is he will go first before White Council, and he will do some serious hits. So theoretical damage is great in one respect. I just think it's quite hard to kind of take it on board completely as face value. I think you just need to test things for yourself sometimes and just work it out, shall we say. But yeah, so if in doubt, like I've said, always follow your nose. My other little tip at the moment is to download LD Player and instead of BlueStacks, because as you've seen from this video, it's a lot smoother than what I've been doing lately. So I would definitely recommend using LD Player. But that's it for this video. Always follow your nose. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.